So I'm gonna hit record. So, and to set it up, so thanks for everybody being here. Sean, thanks for getting this lined up. We've already done introductions as a group, but we're kind of going to go through power, then potentially get into towing, and then get into some of the other questions. And Sean, I'll have you just repeat your question again, because the intent here was to look at folks that already have the Basecamp, those that are looking at purchasing or having those coming in, and just talk about what we have and where we want to go. And so now that we started recording, Sean, you want to kind of frame up your question from a power perspective of where you want to start, and we can get going there?
Yeah. I'll do a quick recap since it's recording now, but my intention is to do a lot of boondocking. So going where others aren't necessarily not plugged in. I have a, maybe not immediate, but probably 6 months to a year Ford F-150 with the onboard generator in mind. But the lithium, how critical is that? Do people go with 2 lithium, 3 lithium? And then how does that, with the solar inverter, is all of that necessary for some of this stuff? Or do you guys recommend going with standard and grow into things based on need and based on what you're using? Or I guess it's really a broad question, but any expertise around this is helpful.
Anna, why don't you start, because you've done probably, between you and myself, you've got the larger solar install. And then I think I have some tools, and I can pull up a website to show you, Sean, calculations of how to get to what you're looking for, and we can kind of go through that if we need to.
Sure. We actually started, I'm going to go back to the 16. We started with the 16, did some boondocking, partial hookups, and we stayed with the AGM solar. The solar, it was the 180 watts, the panel. It was fine. It was totally fine. Although we do live in a climate where it's not very hot. We hardly use the AC. We had the Dometic refrigerator. That was fine. It was perfectly fine. Never had an issue. When we got the 20, we kind of had a wish list, just to not have to worry about going back and having, our wish list put in. So we did it all. We did the 200 watt amp hour lithium. We upgraded that.
Did you do you did two batteries?
2 batteries, yes.
Okay.
But we did do the solar pack. We did do the solar package, but we also did additional 180. So we have 360 watt panels up on the roof. Our thought was, we want more power coming in and sustaining the 2 batteries. But again, it's what you need and how much you consume. We hardly consume any power. Again, we used the AC one time this last year.
But you had to be plugged in for the AC, right?
We had to be plugged in. Yeah. We did bring, luckily, because it was 110 dry in Washington with whipping winds. So we used it a couple days, and that was it. We did bring our little Honda, which we thought, well, because we kind of didn't have an agenda after going into that particular campsite where they had a plug in, so we didn't know. But our main concern with having the lithium is the refrigerator. We've never had a refrigerator run on solar, and that's pretty much the only thing we worried about, because I don't know as far as AGM would do with the 12 volt refrigerator. But that's the only reason why we did it, was to run things constantly, never have to worry about it. Also lithium, because our weather during the winter, it does get pretty cold, especially this winter. We've had snow, and which we don't usually do. Lithium does a lot better, than AGM as far as, just saving it, and what we were advised. So that's why we upgraded.
So I think the lithium seems to be a no-brainer because you can drain them down versus the AGM is about 50%. So you're already starting at half with the AGM, and the lithium is. So that to me is, whether I buy it online or it's probably an easy $2,400 to spend. On the solar, this is maybe way more elementary than everybody else on the call would want to even hear, but I'm willing to ask and show my ignorance.
Ask.
Is the solar powering things, or is it just recharging the batteries?
Just recharging the batteries. That's it.
Okay. So the refrigerator is running on the batteries. If you were to put up the water tank heaters, they're on the battery, and then the solar is constantly feeding it. Okay.
Yes.
And then the solar package, is that 2 on the roof and that's it? Or is that 2 on the roof and then the auxiliary one?
That's 2 on the roof. Auxiliary.
Not accounting.
Yeah, you'd have to purchase a separate briefcase, which will work too. But this has been a question forever in the 16 and the 20. Does the separate input block the solar panel? And I think that's been debunked. I think it works. Yes.
Right. So there, and I can show you 2 different YouTube channels with some absolute great resources, but they're very technical. One is Will Prowse, and Will actually came in and showed the connections from 2 different sources to a set of batteries, 2 different charge controllers. So you're going to have your solar panels. They're going to connect into a charge controller, which regulates the power coming from the panels to a steady stream to the batteries, because that's what the battery is looking for. And he was able to prove, connecting those 2 solar chargers into a set of batteries, that they both work. Now, what happens is they're both reading the level of battery is how they're working. And so the 2 controllers then adjust. So when you put an external panel, well, let's talk about the base of what the Basecamp gives you. So Ana did the upgrade to the lithium. I actually started with just the base 2 solar panels, 90 watts apiece, 180 watts, 1 charge controller, which is a blue solar. Smart solar is a little bit better because it gives you the Bluetooth connection. And I can talk about what I did there. And then that comes into your batteries, and it goes directly to your batteries. And I physically have chased the wires and looked at those. You have the external port that you connect external panels to, but when you put those external panels, you need to put an external panel with a charge controller. Otherwise, it's a straight panel to the battery, and that's going to cause problems, right? But absolutely, you can. And if you go watch, there's a great channel, The Dry Campers. They don't go through and explain what they do, but you can watch them on YouTube and see how they do all the solars, and you'll see them put multiple solar panels on top of a big rig, right? Because they'll do 2,000, 3,000 watts of power. And then they'll have multiple charge controllers all connected to the same battery bank. Now, there's wiring configurations, other things you need to do to get into that. But when you look at that, you're going to usually come in, when you purchase a solar package, you get 2 AGM batteries. Mine were, I think, Lifeline, I believe is the brand. They're 80 amp. They're not 100, which was surprising. I thought I was getting 100, came in at 80. And you're right, Sean, you get half of that power. So I can take those 180 amps of power and really use up to 90 amps of power, and then I need to stop. And so I've done the configuration setup for the charge controller, made sure it's right, so it'll stop that. Ana, or her lithium, can have 2 100 amps, and she can discharge. I usually would want to stop around 10%, but you can just discharge down to 0. And if you get Battleborn, which is one of the more popular, also one of the more expensive batteries, because of their warranty, and I mean, you can pick up the phone and call them, and they'll tell you what to do and how to do it and answer questions. So fantastic support. You can take it down to 0, and that's 3,000 charge cycles. Looking at my AGM batteries, of the 8 months that I've had gone on 8 different trips, I've gone through 1 charge cycle on my AGM batteries. That's it, right? As far as fully pulling it down and coming back up. To include, in December, I went on a trip that was 5 hours long from here to Atlanta, Georgia. And I think my batteries, if I remember correctly, went from 100% to 95% in that 5-hour drive with the refrigerator running the entire time, right? Now, I cooled the refrigerator the day before by plugging it in. right? And making sure the refrigerator is already cold, because when the compressor runs, it uses more, about 70 watts, versus when it's just maintaining, it's bouncing between, I don't know, about 25 to 40 watts of usage.
While you were driving, were you charging with solar though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it was still at a negative run even while charging.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so in the Basecamp, there is an on-off master disconnect switch. And what that master disconnect does is it either allows you to pull power from the batteries or not. Pulling power from the batteries will only power the DC appliances, your lights, your refrigerator, right? USB plug that is over next to the shower, but not the USB plug that's by the sink, because that one is going through the other side.
Right. And so the outside one too, the exterior is the same. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're limited. So it will run your refrigerator. It will run your lights. You can turn on the heat. You can turn on your water pump. Mm-hmm. But your little 110 and 120 volt outlets we normally plug into for appliances, none of those work, because the standard stock solution does not come with an inverter, right? And so when it's in the off position, solar will still charge your batteries, right? So because it's going directly from the solar panel to the charge controller to the battery, so it will still charge. And mine's in storage at the moment, and that's exactly where I have my disconnect switch on off. I know the solar maintains, and I drive by about once a week. I'll check via the Victron app, because I've installed a controller to see what's happening, or smart shunt to see what's happening, and it is staying at 100%, right? And I can look at what's happening between those. If you turn it on, right, then it also allows any of the DC circuits or anything connected to DC to run, which would include the refrigerator, right? And so if you get it in storage and you turn it on, and you leave the refrigerator door open, which you should, to keep it from getting musty and moldy and things, well, the light's going to be on inside the refrigerator. So it's drawing power. And there is some phantom draw always in the systems, even the charge controllers to run the shunt that I have, which is Bluetooth to tell me how much power is in it, draws power. The charge controller.
What is a shunt? What is a shunt?
I'll show you a picture of it and show you exactly what it does in a second.
We just ordered that.
Okay. So the shunt comes in and you put it in line from the negative coming off the battery to tell everything coming out of the batteries how much is being used. And you can then use your phone with a Victron app, because I used a Victron shunt. And so the shunt is simply, you have to put it in line to the wire to then capture how much power is coming through. That's why they call it a shunt, right?
Good question. Did that have to disconnect your Victron on the wall when you, oh, it's still going.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Still going. I've actually got a picture if you want to see of what it looks like.
Yeah.
Let me get the right picture up.
I was thinking about doing the same thing too, but they're out of stock everywhere. So, like everything else.
Yes. So I took a bunch of pictures.
Oh, wow.
Wrong screen. Come here. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yep.
So this is the shunt. And so this is my charge controller. I'm zoomed in on this. I got another picture that I can zoom out. But I have coming from the battery, this black wire coming to the shunt. It goes through, and then any of the regular charge that goes over to the DC panel, which is this white wire going back over to the DC panel, that's the power going to power the Basecamp. And then I've got a little, two other little connections on here that I'm using to power other things. You'll also notice in this picture, not only do I install the smart shunt to tell me what's happening in the batteries, I also bought what they call a VE Direct, which is another device to let me take this blue solar charge controller so that I could measure what's happening on it. Unplugged this little black connection that was there and plugged in this VE Direct. And now on my app, I can come up and I can see either what's happening on the, everything's gonna pop up, that's good. So this is the view I get from the shunt of what's happening with the battery. I can see what the percent of charge is. I can see the voltage on the battery, what's the output. I don't have the temperature connected. I can see what the current is that's being used from the battery. At this point, for the things that I had on, it was using 0.14 amps. It was using 2 watts. And you can see how much had been consumed over a period of time, in this case, 1 day and 3 hours. If I go back in and look at what happens on the VE Direct, which is that other little device connects directly to the smart controller, right? This is looking at the solar panels. So this was the voltage coming in from the solar panels, the voltage for the amps coming in, and this is what it said the state of charge was. And so my panels at the time were only bringing in 22 watts. Remember, I have two panels at 90 watts, 180 total. The max you'll probably ever get with your panels is about 90% of your panel's capacity. So if they give you 180 watts, you're never going to get 180, right? At best, you're probably going to get 90% of that. And then on a cloudy day, what I quite often see, especially during the wintertime for us, I usually don't get above like 60 or 70 watts coming from panels.
You just have two panels, Wayne?
I just have two panels.
Two panels.
Okay. This is a
and then one other question on the solar. I read these comments that people have gotten the solar package and they added the controller. I feel like if I told the Airstream dealership and the solar package, it should come with a controller, right? That's not something I need to tell them add that. It seems like it's like I want wheels on the car I'm buying. Hopefully the wheels already come with the car.
So my package came with the two panels at 90 watts a piece, 180 total, the charge controller, and the two AGM batteries that are in this black box at the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
I added in smart shunt here on the left so that I could measure the battery. I added in the VE Direct, which is another little device that you can buy. It literally just unplugged one connection, plugged in the other. This connection that's unplugged is the one that's by the shower wall. It's the MPTT monitor that lets you measure voltage and see what's happening. But it's really, really hard to know what your percentage of battery is by looking at 14.2 versus 13.7. Because if there's a load on the batteries, because you're using power, well, your voltage drops. But the batteries maybe.
Did you do that, the shunt? Did you put the shunt in or did the dealer do it?
I did that. Yeah, it was pretty easy. I mean, I bought a cable that was 2-3 feet long. That was the appropriate gauge. I think I got a 4-aught gauge. And I just ran it from the battery and I just literally screwed in, you see on the backside of this wall, I connected the cable from the battery here. I took the cable that had been connected for the negative of the battery, put it on the bottom post and you're done. And then you open the app, update the firmware on the shunt. And there's two different sides. I think yeah, so if you look at Victron and what they normally see, a lot of times you'll see just a monitor like one of these. This is not the one that you see in your Basecamp, and it's an MPPT, and it gives you some basic information. But you can choose one of two paths. I chose the BM712, which gives you that shunt that you saw, and it gives you this little monitor that you can then put wherever you want to. It has a really long cord that's probably 10 feet long that you could then pull the wire. I'm eventually going to cut a hole in the entrance of my box and just mount it there. But as you saw in that other picture, with this one disconnected, that MPPT controller that was already installed doesn't work anymore. It's not physically connected to anything, right? If you want to save a little bit of money and you don't need this particular display, you're just going to use your phone for solar, you can use the smart shunt. It is just the shunt by itself without this little display. This unit includes both, right? When you go into it and look at it and see, as far as what's included in the parts. So hopefully that helps of what you would put those in. The other thing that I purchased.
What is the price of that? What is the price of that? That one?
I don't think they show it on their website. Let's see if I can.
The one I'm looking at, because I wanted to add something like that too, because we're like, we just have the regular Victron that the dealer installed. And it really doesn't say much of your usage. It does tell you, what you're pulling, what you're somewhat the amperage you're using, but that's about it. Or if there's an error. So it's nice having that shunt just to see, if you're really, wanting to monitor your usage.
You want the shunt plus the display monitor, get the 712, Amazon, it's listed at $200. If you're okay with just using your phone, you could install just the shunt and it's $130.
But the 200 includes the shunt itself, not just the monitor.
Correct. It's the shunt plus the monitor. So you get both of those as part of the package. So this is what you get as part of the package.
And the dealer's charging $400 for the shunts. And I think that just gives us, access to that Bluetooth app that will read the monitor. I don't think we get the separate monitor, but $400 for the dealer to do that.
Yep. And they're in charge of the labor
plus. Yeah, so that was parts and plus labor.
Right, correct.
Yeah, and if you're not comfortable with electricity, and let's be honest, DC power is much more dangerous than AC power in some ways, but not at 12 amps or 12 volts. Right? 12 volts is not nearly as bad. I mean, as a kid, I used to take a 9-volt battery and put it to my tongue. We were stupid like that, right? Okay, so this is 12 volts. Now, I've worked in a telephone company data center where we're doing 48-volt systems. And if you were to take a screwdriver and touch to the negative positive terminal, it will evaporate. It's gone, right? The molecules disappear. But if you're going to get the shunt, you're going to have the monitor on the side. You've got the shunt where one connection comes in from the battery, the other connection goes back to your DC panel, and you just need to put the gauge right. And I'm pretty sure I went and got a 4-gauge wire that was already pre-made and just connected battery to the appropriate terminal on the shunt, and then took what had been connected battery, connected other in the shunt, and then configured it with the Victron app. It's pretty easy. And there's some cheat sheets that you can get that tell you what to put in the app and what settings to put in, because you got to change the settings on lithium versus AGM versus lead acid versus something else. So does that help?
Yes, a lot.
Okay. The other key, and so here's one of the questions that I asked early on, because before I started learning, is can I run my air conditioner? Living in South Carolina, you need air conditioner during the summer, 24 hours a day. And so there's two folks that do really, really good jobs of understanding solar. One is the Explorist.Life. And I watched one of Nate's videos last night as he was showing how to build an entire system from scratch inside of a van. The other, Will Prowse, fantastic. He's in Las Vegas, I believe. And he goes through and tests all these different things, right? But from the Explorist website, they actually have an audit sheet that if you go to theirs, how many batteries are needed for, in this case, a camper van electrical system. But you can go down and you can simply click on their download power audit. It takes you to a sheet that he has built inside of Google Sheets. So I went ahead and did that and pulled this down. So if you go through, it lets you fill in some numbers of what you think your load is going to be and what you're going to use for power. And so I'll put in a couple of numbers just to play around with it to see last night as we got ready for this. And for example, I have a little Keurig that even when I'm boondocking, I carry a generator that I might put it in, but I might only turn it on for 10 minutes to do a pot or two of coffee, and then I turn it off. And so, but I know that unit uses about 1,500 watts of power. I'm going to use it for about 10 minutes. That's 20 amps of power. And I've got 180 divided by half. So I've got 90 amps total if I don't recharge it from solar. So 10 minutes of the Keurig uses 20 of my available 90 amps, or right at 21. Right? If you use an air conditioner, and I've done some testing, there's a video that I've got out on YouTube where I physically plugged up my Basecamp, and I ended up using this Reliance Control appliance load tester. And I plugged in the drop cord and then the devices I wanted to check. And this tells me watts and amps. And then I literally plugged in the Basecamp and turned on the air conditioner and turned on the water pump and different things to see what was there, and found that the air conditioner in the 20 was running about 1,100 watts on low and about 12 to 1,400 watts, depending on the compressor, on high. So for the spreadsheet, I put in 1,400 watts, but I've got 0 minutes for the moment. So
now that was plugged into your generator, but doesn't it take even more to get the air conditioning started? I've read.
It does. It does bounce up, right? And so you've got the initial load, and you can install devices to minimize that in air conditioners that kind of decrease fan, compressor, the others. But let's ignore the air conditioner for a minute. I'll come back to that in a second. But in this spreadsheet, you can come in and put in other things that if you wanted a hair dryer, Sean, you said your wife's like, I'm only going to use certain things when I go camping. And my wife has told me a hair dryer is one of the things we'll have to have, right? And it's been that way since we've been married, right? But only running the hair dryer, and I literally took her hair dryer with this device, and it was running right at 1500 watts. If she spends 15 minutes with on, that uses 31 amps of my 90 available, right? So anything that is like an air conditioner or heat, massive power draws, right? So in this sheet, he lets you put in different things that are normally items that you would plug in, and the air conditioner does require that type of power. You can also go back.
Wayne, I apologize for cutting off, but I get confused when you say it uses 31 of your 90 available, but you're plugged in a generator already. So it's really not that it's 1/3 of what's available. You're already in a generator, right?
You're right. In the way it's configured today, I cannot plug one of these devices in and use my batteries. If I installed an inverter converter, yes, I then could use the inverter to take the DC power, invert it to AC power, and I could plug in the Keurig laptop or something else. Right now, that the base package does not come with that. So, so looking at that, and that's why right now I'm talking what ifs, because if I go to this scenario, and I'll show you in a minute what it would take to run the air conditioner 24 hours, and the cost, I'll show you just the cost for batteries from Battleborn. So the other section that Nate had put in his spreadsheet was, well, there's certain things like a laptop where you've got to plug in the adapter, right? And you've got to come back and see how this fits in. And I took a picture last night of the power adapter from my laptop, right? And you can come in and you can look on it down here. Kind of hard to see. But if I look at the output, right there, my laptop uses 15 volts at 4 amps, right? It has another one, 5 and 1, but this particular adapter lets me plug a USB connection into it when I'm traveling. So it's great that instead of having to, connect my phone in the airport in, I can just plug one in and I power both. So you can put things in the spreadsheet here like that. So if I put 15 volts at 4 amps, and if I'm going to use this for 1 hour, it'll go through and do the calculations of how much power is going to be needed to power that. Now, in the Basecamp, you can't do that unless you install an inverter. But it does let you go in and show, well, what if I did these things? How much power would I need? Then you can do straight DC appliances. I played around with the numbers. I put 3 watts for the lights in the Basecamp. I didn't look to see what they really were. And I just put in 10 lights and said, I'm going to run them for 8 hours, right? 480 minutes. And that's going to end up using 20 amps of your power for the day, right? So this is just power usage, kind of an audit of what you're going to do. You could run the water pump for 60 minutes between washing dishes, getting water, taking 2 showers for my wife and I. So I just put 60 minutes. That's going to use 4 amps of your power for the water pump at 48 watts. And I just have it once in there using it. And then you can do other things like cell phones that you can plug in, Bluetooth speakers. I put 2 charges for a cell phone. But just plugging in 10 minutes of a Keurig, 15 minutes of a hair dryer. I put in 60 minutes for my wife and I's laptops, because hers is a slightly smaller Microsoft Surface laptop versus Surface Book. And then I put in 8 hours of lights, 60 minutes of water pump, the low fan for 60 minutes when, let's say, I was cooking a couple of times and I put 60 minutes in. I charged my cell phone twice, if you can do these things, right? The 12-volt refrigerator, I plugged in the numbers of how many amps hours per day that it used based on some other data that I had in there. And what this calculator will do is tell you how many amps with just those few things I used, you're going to use for the day, right? And you can see that I was going to use roughly about 105 amps, which is more capacity than I have. I do have solar retrofitting and bringing power in as power is going out of the batteries. So that offsets. And there's different calculators to figure out your solar. And then you can look to see what happens. but using the Basecamp at 1400 watts for the AC, and my scenario, I said, well, what happened if I really wanted to run the AC for an entire day? That's 2,800 amps.
Wow.
So now you need 2,900 amps. And for lithium batteries, you need about 3,000 hours of lithium batteries. And if you buy the Battleborn GC2s at 30, that is what, right at $30,000 in batteries alone. That doesn't include the chargers, the inverters, the solar panels. That's just the batteries. If you wanted to use their new GC3, which is 270 amps, slightly less, but that's 30 batteries at 50 pounds a piece, 40 to 50 pounds. You've added a huge amount of weight. So if you want to use air conditioners, the answer is you could probably use it for an hour or two. You're going to drain your batteries and then you're about done. It's not going to run what I was hoping early on, and found out later on that I was kind of silly, that it just, the math doesn't work out. So this is out there.
So what's your solution in the end? So what was your solution to run your air conditioning?
So my solution was a little Honda generator that I can put in the back of my Tahoe, and I carry it with me and I plug it in. It runs 30 amps. Most of the time when I've done my testing, Sean, I've never used more than about 10 to 11 amps through the day, except for when I turn on the hair dryer or the something else. And that 10 to 11 amps is with the air conditioner running, right? And so this generator on eco mode will run on a tank of gas, is 3.5 gallons, for about 14 to 16 hours. So for $1,000 or for about $2,000 for this generator, because I wanted something super quiet and reliable like the Honda, you can get several different brands that are much cheaper, Champion and others, right? I could, for a gallon, for a tank of gas, and I've got another 5 gallon over here, I could get about 2 days of running this generator nonstop to power the Basecamp, air conditioner, and everything inside of the Basecamp.
So
and at
But you
2,000
wouldn't run it
versus
nonstop. You wouldn't run it nonstop. You probably just run it to take the edge off, or at night or something like that. Or do you run it nonstop?
in South Carolina, I run it nonstop.
Yeah.
Right, because when it's 90 degrees and 85% humidity, if it's that hot inside the Basecamp without enough circulation, even with the fan running, it's at night, you could probably turn it off a little bit when you've got enough air from the fan going through with maybe the back door open and the side screens open. Otherwise, it's just so miserably hot, I wouldn't do it.
And your condensation is probably so bad if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so much more economical. It's amazing because I can see you spending so much with just those batteries. Well, you wouldn't have the room, and add on the controller, the inverters. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you guys have inverters? Anna, Wayne, do you have inverters?
No, we kept the we didn't for our setup. It was not necessary to put an inverter in. We actually opted for a portable inside, because I did all the numbers too, and I was just floored how much, because we were going to add a third battery and inverter just to be able to use the 110. And there's really hardly anything that we really use that's 110 all the time. So we ended up opting for one of those EcoFlows. And the cool thing about it is it's built-in inverter. It's got so much wattage, and we use it for home too, because we have our power always, go out, just because of where we live. But that's what we opted for. And it's not as probably equivalent weight-wise if we had to add more batteries and whatever. So it's price-wise, it was so much more economical and functional than adding into the Basecamp.
Wayne, can I ask you where you put your generator when you're traveling? Because we're going to be using an SUV also, and I worry about the gasoline. And do you carry extra gas? Do you put it in your trailer or your SUV?
So right now I have a 2011 Chevy Tahoe. It will pull 8,400 pounds. and has a payload on the back end that I could get up to 1,000 pounds. So it fits well when we have a towing conversation. I bought 2 little ramps from Northern Tools, I think it was, or Tractor Supply. And I take that small generator and I just push it into the back of the SUV and I put the gas can beside it. You can put it in the base camp and store it in there, or you could put the gas in the base camp, but I didn't want to have that where I was going to be sleeping. I have not had a problem yet with the smell of the gas being too much. When I first start driving, I do open the windows just because that. I'm hoping to buy a truck, kind of like Sean was talking about, but the prices have been skyrocketing so high. I'm waiting on the demand to decrease and the prices to drop, and then I'm going to switch to a pickup truck, and I'll put it in the back of the pickup truck. But the only time that I carry the generator is when I'm going boondocking. So we have some friends that have 10 acres of land in the middle of nowhere. We go out there, and the only thing there, if I've used the generator twice for like 3 hours. The rest of the time, I'm just using the solar to recharge the batteries, and then using the batteries to power my lights, occasionally the fan, and then the fan for the heater and the water pump. And that's it. And it's worked fine. I think I was telling Sean on our call yesterday that the last time we went back in October, I showed up, only had about, when we got there that night, we've been running the lights during the daytime, and my batteries were at 85% charge. We turned on the lights for a little while, and we have these little fairy lights that we turn on with a USB, very low power consumption. And during the night, I ran the heater from about 8 o'clock at night until about 6 the next morning. And then when I got up the next morning, my batteries were at 65%. So it dropped 20% of the battery throughout the night of running primarily the fan for the heater. The next morning, the sun comes up, hits the panels, it starts recharging the batteries, and they were back up to about 85% by the time we left that day. And we're in not peak sun season because it's winter, and there was some shade from the trees. So it's still charged. It was running about 50 to 70 watts of power coming in. But we also, when we're out walking around, we turn the lights off, right? And just disconnected the things that we didn't need running.
Wayne, did you have to add anything to the, I was going to ask you, thank you, Sean. Oh, my last question, and I got to run, but did you have to add anything for the startup on that generator combo? You had mentioned like there's a startup pool for the AC. That'll be our case, because our home base is in Houston. So our next couple of years is just going to be Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. So we won't have these, it'll be hot, 10 months of the year. So I will definitely have a generator.
So that's the reason that I chose the 3000 versus the 2000. Honda has a 2000, and you can get one, and you can run the air conditioner off of one. Very lightweight. You can pick it up and carry it. It's 20 something pounds, I think.
That's
my Honda is much heavier.
2200. Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
And if you have to run it all the time, like what you're doing, James, you can buy a second 2200 so that you can carry just one sometimes, or you can carry both, and you can tie them together, and it will give you close to a full 30 amps, about 25 amps between the two. Okay.
And what's the AC requires what on the startup? Like you said, low is, what's the pull?
If you look at the YouTube video, I'll post the link in the chat.
Okay.
Of when I use this device.
Okay.
When my AC started up on low, I was already running about 200, 250 watts. It hit 1100 when I turned the AC on.
Okay.
So there is a spike. It might not have captured the full spike in there for the compressor turning on, but I didn't see it go above 1400 during that time frame.
Okay. So 3000 is plenty then. Okay.
Yeah. We're in the process of getting a soft start in ours, just for that reason, because we want to keep to the 2200. We're getting our camper back in about a week or so. We're going to test that too, just to see, because that spike is crazy, sometimes when it's not even necessary. So I can give some feedback then, but a lot of people are doing, and it also saves the motor, I'm told, because of that spike constantly, happening.
I know there's some dual fuel generators, but does the Honda have one with propane?
I think they
don't, but you can convert it.
Yeah, you can convert it. There's a device you can add to it and convert it to propane.
I guess they generate less power when they use propane.
Well, they do. And you have to consider too, on the front of the base camp, there's two 20-pound propane tanks. And that Honda 3000 I have would go through a full 20 pounds, one of the tanks, in about 4 to 5 hours.
Wow.
I can take the 3.5 gallons of gas, put it on eco, because it has 3,000 watts, and I'm probably not using more than 1,500 watts. And I can probably get 14 to 16 hours on the generator versus trying to use the propane.
Wow.
That's amazing difference.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
James, I just posted a one that I got some value, a video on YouTube. It helps my visual learning, where he drew a diagram of using an inverter with just the one smaller generator to start up and run an air conditioning.
All right, thank you. I have to run, everyone. It was nice meeting all y'all. Thank you, Sean and Wayne, for putting this together. So helpful. I appreciate it. Look forward to conversations upcoming.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jane.
So Wayne, I have a couple quick questions for you. Appreciate this. Is super helpful. Have you measured the basic draw from the base camp when the power switch is turned on, but not from the refrigerator, just the other items? Like, I know that the carbon monoxide pulls a little bit. Are those fairly meaningless, or has anybody really measured kind of the other parasitic draws?
Yeah, so I've actually done that, I think once, and I pulled the fuse. You can get, and these are just extra fuses that I bought. I pulled the fuse out for the refrigerator so that it wouldn't come on, because that's the only way to stop the refrigerator from not coming on, right? And I think I was running somewhere between 50 to 70 watts of power. So it's still a bit of power, and I had the lights on. As far as just the parasitic, if I turn the battery disconnect on and I don't turn anything on, I want to say it's in the 4 to 5 watt range. So there is a little bit of a draw, but part of that too is the solar charge controller. Even though there's power coming in, it is power. The smart shunts that I put in need power. So I don't know which one of those is drawing how much power, but it's not very much at all, but it will pull power if you have it turned on.
So, and then my other question is, when you have the DC switch turned, or the battery switch turned off, you have the smart shunt and the charge controller running, and you said you had something else powered. Are there other things that you're powering when the switch is off?
So I think it's just the two shunts, the VE direct that's on the smart controller or the Bluetooth controller, the shunt, and there was one other thing that is always connected, and I can't remember if it's it's not the propane, because that turns off. There is one other item, and I forget what it is, that runs, but it's very low power on that end. But what I find with the panels in, when you hit the disconnect, there's not enough in there to draw it, and the panels themselves provide more than enough power to keep recharging the batteries, even with very low light during the day.
Okay. And you had an alligator clip on there. I don't know if that was anything that you had figured out that other people hadn't.
No, that actually is from my tire pressure monitor system. So I bought a Tire Minder i10 that I have in my car, and it has a little remote that they tell you have to use, that you have to connect to the battery and you have to turn on, so that when you're going down the road. But what I've actually found is, I did that the first couple of trips. I found since then that the little unit inside of my truck is still close enough to the wheels of the base camp that I don't need that little repeater being powered by the battery. So that's what the alligator clip was.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So with everything drawing a little bit when it's in storage, is just the solar keeping that from depleting the batteries? And if I were undercover, then what do you do for storage?
So what I've heard most people do, Sean, is they'll actually physically just disconnect the battery. So if you look at your battery case inside, I don't have a good picture to show you, but there's a plastic case over my two AGMs that came in. I'm assuming it's very similar. They do the lithium install depending on the person that does the install. And there's two posts. There's a positive and a negative. You literally just undo those two posts and you're done. So now the bad part about that is the panels and the charge controller are still there. If there's any light getting to them, there will still be power flowing down to the charge controller. So one of the things I'm debating is going into the solar panels and installing a disconnect switch, so that if I do disconnect the batteries, whether it's cold or I'm gonna put it in storage for a long period, that I'll turn the switch so that no power is coming down from the solar panels to the charge controller. So charge controller doesn't need anything because it's not running off of the battery. And then I can disconnect the batteries with no worries that there's any power coming in from the solar panels. Cool. Other questions on
Thank you.
power, solar?
I guess I have one more question. Is there, I know that if you use the external port, you know, the ZAMP port on the side, it needs to be a controlled, the briefcase needs to have its own charge controller.
Yes.
Would there be a benefit to putting a second charge controller inside the unit so you didn't have to have a controlled briefcase, or is it just not that much more to just buy the controlled briefcase and not worry about the cost of a second controller?
I haven't looked at the cost. I know, Anna, you've installed a second controller,
We
right?
have a 140 briefcase. You're better off just buying it. Depending on which brand you get, they will always have an option to just an unregulated and a regulated, which is the regulated would have the controller. You're better off because it's not much more. You're probably going to pay a lot more adding another controller in your Basecamp, which is not even necessary.
Okay.
If you're going to do the briefcase.
I think where it'd be an advantage of having it unregulated is if you're using that panel or series of panels in multiple locations where you have other setups that already have a controller. You don't want a controller on the panel going to another controller. But if you don't, and this is the only place you're going to use it, as Anna mentioned, get the one with the controller and you don't have to worry about it because it is another couple $100 to buy a controller. Then you got to install it, get the right wiring, run the wiring, doing the other pieces versus you buy the panel with the regulated controller on it, you just plug it in and you're done.
Now you would see the output in your smart shunt, but your VE Direct, you wouldn't see that power coming in because it wouldn't be going through that controller, correct?
Correct. Because the VE Direct is only getting the power from the panels to that one charge controller.
Okay.
And what we've experienced too, we have portable solar, well, I don't want to call it a generator, those power stations that sometimes they don't, we use our ZAMP. It's regulated and it won't power those, but you can actually buy cords, MC4 cords that plug in to use your briefcase as a multitasker. Because some things that you want to plug in with that briefcase will not work, but you can add, and they're very inexpensive, under $20 for those cords.
Separate cord.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the plans are. I do have a couple more solar questions just because I'm going to be kind of figuring out my own system, maybe with the dealer, maybe on my own. The panels that come from Airstream, the 2 90-watt panels, are those, who makes those panels? Do you know who makes those panels? And
there's amps.
There's amps. And are those, do people feel like those are one of the better panels? I know there's a lot of issues with some of the flexibles kind of glazing over time. And so I wonder if people have thoughts on the ZAMP panels. And Anna, I think you bought the 2 additional you did were just the matches of the ZAMP.
Yes.
Right?
We've been very happy with they're the legacy model, which is, the big ones, but we've been very happy with them. Some folks use the flexible, they potentially, over time, they say that it's not as resilient as, your standard legacy where it's, it's got a good structure and, yeah. But we have not had any issues with them and we love them.
Thank you.
My understanding there's room for a third on the 20X, right? On the 20 up on the roof. You
can.
I've read some people doing that.
They did 2 extra 90 in the front, and they actually ended up splicing one because there's only 3 inputs, and 2 of them were already used for the package. So they ended up splicing the third or the fourth one, and it's worked. It's worked. But so yes, I think Wayne, didn't you put additional solars?
Okay, it does come with a joiner box that has 3 ports. 2 are being used with the current 2 panels, and what they did for Ana is exactly what they can do. Is you can buy 2, 3, 4 more other panels, and to a certain point, it depends on the wattage, voltage, everything else. You can combine those and split them together and bring them into that one point. But then you have to be concerned about the size of the wire. The wire that they pull up to the roof only handles a certain amount of voltage before it starts getting hot, and so you don't want to overload that. So 2 panels, similar, not a big deal. But if you start getting much bigger, you go buy a 400-watt panel, then you're probably going to have to re-pull the wire up to that connection so that you can handle the additional power from that one. And because that one's mismatched in size from the other 2 90-watt, you're probably also going to need a different charge controller.
Yeah, this is the maximum we could do.
So on the one that so you had 2 plugged in stock, and then you added 2 more, and they spliced those into the 3rd input in the ZAMP port. Does that still, do you get the full benefit of both of those panels, or does that splicing cause any issues because it doesn't have, say, the right gauge of wire, or it's been fine?
It's been fine for us. Yeah, it's been fine.
Could you theoretically, with that same wire, could you splice the original 2, the new 2, and then do 2 more potentially and have 6, or is that going to overload the overall? I mean, I know the charge controller might be an issue, but from a wiring standpoint, could you splice in each of the 3 ports 2 90 watts into each of those ports?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay.
Well, it's possible. I've seen someone had, I want to say they put 2 more flexibles beside the AC unit. I'd have to find that picture. Someone did that, and they had 2 in the front. Excuse me, they had the standard solar, 2 in the front and 2 more. And I would think that they probably had to modify a lot of the wiring, because our dealership was adamant that they can only put anything more, because they did ask for 170, but then they said we can do that, but anything beyond that you can't do anymore. So
okay. Yeah, because I was thinking, even with the Legacy, even if you went with the same panels, I saw your 2 that you put on the front, and then I was thinking you could probably, I haven't measured, but you could probably fit a Legacy panel on each side of the air conditioner.
Yep.
Get a total of 6. I mean, I guess you could theoretically even go further back, but I think just from a reasonable amount, if I want to go really off grid, but I have to work. So I was thinking I could potentially go to 6, but you may have to pull, I guess it may overload the wiring that they've pulled.
I agree. Okay. That's a lot of modification.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it would be fine. Our thought was, the more solar panels you have, the less batteries, you need, because it's constantly charging it. But again, weather permits, but you possibly could just, kind of balance it, more batteries.
Yeah.
And, your briefcase also, that's another option.
Yeah. It's kind of either or. Do I get a briefcase because you can move it around, or would I just put maybe a little more on the roof?
Yeah.
I'd like to put at least,
and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, at least what you did with the 4, I think up on top. But anyway, just thinking through, since I have a few months to ponder it, I guess.
The good part about the lithium is even my AGM are inside of a box that is vented. There's a little hose that comes out, goes to the side of the base camp, and there's a grill on the side to let it vent out. You really don't need that as much for AGM because they're self-contained. You do need that for lead acid. They just took the exact same box they would use for the lead acid batteries and put the AGM in there. When you go to lithium, you don't need that. You don't need the venting. So you could actually take that entire box out, and then it gives you more room. Now you have to structurally support it, but you could put 3, 4, 5 batteries in there. And I think somebody else in the group had already posted that he had installed 6 100 amp batteries, right?
Yes.
So it's all possible. You can install the inverter. I watched Slow Your Roll. They've got a video where he put a Renogy inverter that was, I can't remember if it's 1,000 or 2,000 watts connected back in. He shows how he did that on his. So there's lots of different configurations. The big challenge is you also need to understand the distance and the size of the gauge of the wire, because you could overheat and cause a fire if you're not careful as you put it in.
And also, you know, for us ladies, the room, you know, are you willing to sacrifice all that room that you're gonna lose just to,
Before we, I don't, if anybody has to drop, just feel free to do so. But if Wayne, if you or Anna, if you have to drop as well, we have to call it
good. My tribe is still sleeping.
But I had 2 questions that before we move off of power that are on my mind. I'm going to loosely define propane as part of power. Does anybody carry an extra 20-pound propane with them? Is that kind of unusual or?
No, we do.
Okay.
But we're always prepared here because we always have burn bans. And we love having our fire pit. So we actually carry, when we're allowed to burn, we carry a little Solo Ranger. And then when we're not, we have a little 19-inch propane. So we always carry a separate propane to go with that only, or if we're cooking outside. We have not used the port for the base camp because we strictly use it for, we strictly use it for the stove and heat. But yeah, we always have either, we have a 10-pound too that sometimes, but it's not enough for, you know, for your fire pit. So it's totally, I think it's totally natural to bring an extra.
I was thinking if I have that brand new F-150 and plenty of space in the back, you know, it might be something I throw in there. And then my other question is a typical Jack Handy type Sean question, but why is it, maybe somebody can explain this to me, that RVing or Airstream or this group is so, everybody's doing different things as compared to like there being a package that you tell your dealership you want? It seems like it's a lot of MacGyvering going on. Is that normal in the RV world?
I think so. I do. I think so. It's just a lot of things you come up with that to me, that just kind of, you know, for your needs, kind of, you know, to make things easier. So yeah, I've always MacGyvered everything. Yeah, even in our 4-wheel camper, everything had to be that way, just, you know, to fit your needs.
I mean, I feel like you're talking about the guy that did the six batteries. I feel like if I told the dealers, go ahead and put in 6, they'd probably look at you like, what? You don't do that.
Some don't. I don't know about you guys, if you've noticed, some dealerships will not do it. Just, I don't know if it's because they're not knowledgeable, they don't have the right equipment. But I think it just differs from whoever you go to. I don't know. What do you guys think?
All right.
I think a lot of the dealers that I've dealt with, which hasn't been a lot, but the few that I have, they're more small mom and pop shops. Even I bought mine from Airstream in South Carolina. It was a good experience as we went through that, but they're not a very large shop. And so when you get in there, I have no idea how many total employees they have, but I'm guessing 25 to 40 max. And most of those are folks in there doing mechanical work on the trailers themselves. Probably have 4 or 5 sales folks that are going in and doing it. And then, you know, they had one person in parts, they had one person in the front desk. So it's not a large organization. So they're just not up to that point. And solar realistically has only taken off to the level for RVing probably in the past 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of people know. Now, if you go and look at, you know, the 2 folks that I showed you, between Will Prowse, between Nate, the dry campers, and there are a bunch of others that are really getting into it and doing lots of videos. And then you look at the level of complexity, like Nate building an entire platform for a Sprinter van to go back out and do some stuff. It takes a certain level of electrical knowledge and time to build these. And then you got to cut it and measure it, because if your electrical wire is too long, right, then you're going to burn something up, right? Or you're going to have all that resistance. So I think they're just not equipped with somebody to handle things like the solar. They could go hire a separate electrician, but most electricians don't know how to handle solar because they haven't done it, right?
I think a really good example of where what I'm talking about is the guy that invented a rack on the back of the Airstream for bikes. Yeah. And I'm like, and I was guaranteed that from our salesperson at Airstream of Chicago that Airstream monitors and they join a lot of these Facebook groups. But it's like, well, that's a pretty simple idea. A lot of people would rather store their muddy mountain bike outside the base camp than inside it. So why aren't they taking some of these ideas and making them easily available rather than MacGyvering things? It just seems odd.
So, so I found yesterday, Sean, part of my job full-time is working as a product manager. And so I talk with the customers, look at what they want, meet with engineering teams, look to see what's possible. And then I have to meet with the business to see what they want to sell. And part of that is standardization. Airstream has this is my guess, they have a view of what they like their trailer to look like, and they don't want all these modifications.
Right.
It changes the view. It changes the aesthetics of an Airstream, right? There is engineering work that has to be done as far as load, because if you add 400 pounds of bikes on the back end between the hitch and the bikes and the other stuff, right, you just change your total weight ratio and you're leading towards sway. Is the trailer axle in the right position to handle that? Most likely, maybe not. And so then you get into those liabilities. But even if the product manager sits down and watches the forums, which they do, if they come back and look at it, then not only can the engineer turn around, I'm pretty sure one of the engineers could sit down in 3 or 4 months and redesign it, redo all the diagrams and say, we're ready to go. But then it's got to go through the whole manufacturing process. And you're probably looking at a 3-5 year period minimum to potentially roll something like that out. But yeah, that's why you see a lot of, I think, the MacGyvering, or the folks that have come up with the stuff on the hitch, where you can use a drill to move it around, right? Or like Airstream now with their new eStream they just announced.
Yeah. Yes.
That you can use an app to let it move itself around. For my wife, I said, now you don't need me to back it up. I can just give you the app and you can back it up, right?
That's amazing.
You'll be over by the fire.
That's right. Any more questions on power? So Sean, did we want to hit, I know one of the other questions you mentioned was towing. I didn't know if we wanted to get into that area.
Yeah, I'm mostly good there. I think I guess I'll see if anybody else has some questions on that subject.
I have a 3/4 ton diesel, and so I'm not really worried about it. And I've towed boats with no sway control, but I still was thinking about doing one of the lighter, hitches. And I just didn't know if anybody had any real opinions about that, if they've used them themselves yet, or if you're just towing without. I know some people go with the Anderson, some people go with the Easy, whatever. So I don't know if anybody has an opinion about it. I don't think I need it per se, but I was thinking I might, just to have peace of mind.
I can tell you my story. We have one, and I can tell you why. Very first trip, we decided we're going to take it down to Hilton Head Island. I hooked it up. And again, my truck will tow 8,400 pounds. And I actually stopped at the cat scale on the way down, weighed it, and it came in at 37 something, right? We didn't even hit 3,800 pounds. So more than enough capacity to be able to handle it. Yet at one point I'm on the interstate and it's 3 lanes and I'm behind one of these tanker trucks, right? Carrying the gasoline to the gas stations. And he kept slowing down and speeding up and slowing down. I'm like, I've had enough of this. I'm gonna pull to the middle lane and I'm gonna pass him. Well, what I did not have enough visibility of was there was a nice big hill coming up right after that. So I get past him, and the base camp is just about past him, and we start going up the hill. And then he had been picking up speed. He catches up with me. So I've got him to the right, and I can feel a little bit of the Basecamp. I mean, you can feel it in your normal car, but you can also feel it with the Basecamp attached because they're now almost one unit. That wasn't as much of a problem until all the other cars started doing 90 past me on the left side. And then the back of the Basecamp started to sway. So I let off the gas, started backing up because I wanted to get away from him because I knew the air, because I also drive motorcycles. And I've been through Kansas and 50-mile-an-hour winds on a motorcycle, right? Next to 18-wheelers. And so I just backed off, hit the brake controller to make sure things were kind of leveling out. And it wasn't bad, but it was enough that my wife noticed. And then I got behind the big tanker truck and we went on down the Hilton Head and didn't have any more problems. But I did notice that as the big trucks, even if it was just 2 lanes going down the interstate, went past me, I could feel a little bit of the truck moving over. It scared my wife enough and me enough that we called Camping World and searched around, and I drove an hour from Hilton Head to Savannah, Georgia, went to Camping World and bought the only weight distribution hitch that I thought would fit my vehicle. It was the only one I could find that quickly. Picked it up and brought it back, and it was an Equalizer 12K, which was way over anything that we need, right? Because I'm pulling 3,800 pounds, and this weight distribution will handle 12,000 pounds. Significant difference driving up the road. Now, when 18-wheelers, cars, anything else pass me on either side, there is none of the movement in my truck or the Basecamp, right? Now, was I ever going to get in a position where it was going to be enough sway that it really would truly get into a dangerous situation? Don't know, don't care. I drive now with one hand or a couple of fingers on the steering wheel, and the trucks go by and I don't even feel it. Before I did. So do you need one? No. Is it nice to have? Yep. So that's kind of my experience.
No, I appreciate that. I rode a big touring motorcycle down the Columbia River Gorge a long time ago, and I've never been so afraid in my entire life. The semis, between the Columbia River Gorge and the wind coming up and the semis, it was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. No, I appreciate it. So you like the Equalizer. It's worked well for you.
Yeah, it's worked well. It's a bit of a pain that you got to deal with, right? Because once you hook up and hitch up, then you've actually literally got to take the hitch and raise the hitch and your truck up so that the bars are now even with the frame, put them on, and then lower it back down and remove your blocks. When you first start lifting up the back of your truck, I was like, holy mackerel, am I going to cause some damage? And no, you're not. That's exactly what the Equalizer training videos will tell you what to do. But that peace of mind has been nice. When I take it back and forth to storage, I don't use the Equalizer. I just hitch it up and go. So it'll work either way. And a lot of people swear that, you don't need it. Pulling with a larger truck, you may not have run into what I did with a smaller SUV. So it really just also depends on the tow vehicle.
Boy, I wouldn't call a Tahoe a smaller SUV though. That's
well,
kind of surprising.
Compared to a bigger truck, yeah, it is. But you're right, it's a good sized vehicle.
I think I'm going to have one. I think I'm going to just take the enjoyment approach, and it's a little bit of a hassle to hook up, but the piece, just the comfort of driving down the road, not worrying as much, I think for me is probably worth it.
Yeah. Now, and I'm also aware, Keith, that sorry, Anna, that if I'm in Kansas and I hit one of those 50-mile-an-hour winds with the trailer behind me, I'm pulling over because you see the 18-wheelers get turned over from the wind. So there's it won't help in everything, but it definitely gives you that peace of mind.
Yeah.
I tried to get my husband to get one, but he's like, you pull with a 2,500 SUV. But just for peace of mind. But we did Columbia Gorge. We actually, one of our favorite campsites is in Vantage, which we have to go through and drive by semis. And he's like, see, this last summer, he's like, see, it's no worries. And we passed them. But again, we have a 2,500 and no weight distribution, no sway bars or anything, just a really hefty hitch. And it was fine. It was really fine. I mean, we were passing them like they weren't even there. And all I was waiting for was that, you know, in the back. And yeah. So if you anything above, I think 1,500, you know, sometimes,
yeah.
I mean, depends on how you know, the terrain you go through. You'll.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Have you guys, either one of you, upgraded to the automated crank on the Basecamp?
Oh,
yeah, electric.
okay. I'm getting it right now.
I saw somebody just posted a nice video of them installing one the other day.
Oh, we got the electric jack ourselves.
Jack,
Yeah. Just
Right.
like Wayne,
I installed one.
Yeah.
Did you?
It was pretty easy. Here, I'll share my screen.
Is the cranking a real pain?
It seems like it's a quality of life improvement is what I'm picking up.
It will save us. Hurry up. Sometimes you could get, depending on how, if it's you, Lori, because I mostly crank it, and there's a point, depending on your terrain, you have to crank it really high, or, you know, and sometimes it does get pretty tight and heavy.
I'm thinking about an old-fashioned ice cream maker, you know, where you have to take turns, and okay, I've done my cranks, now it's your turn.
Your turn.
Yeah.
That's beautiful there, Wayne.
Yeah. So Laurie, with my wife now and my daughter's 19. When I back up, I now sit in the truck and they will lift it with this automatic, right? Because before they didn't want to get in and have to sit and do the cranking. And my wife's not, she's not going to do that. But it's super easy to install. Well, at least it was for me. You take out the 3 screws here from the hitch you already had. I use these stands just to support the trailer when I was taking it off. Undid the 3 screws, put this Phoenix on, put the 3 screws back, and then you run the black and the red cables back up to your battery. And there's a hole just right underneath the battery, so you just feed it right up in there. And I literally just put it on the same 2 posts that the batteries are for the battery box, and then it's ready to go. So it is off. I was debating, I had to put a kind of a kill switch. I didn't want it just phantom drawing power, but I've tested it. When it's not running, there's 0 draw of power back from the batteries. Nice. So it makes it super easy for me, for my wife, or anybody else to raise or to lower the trailer. It's much quicker too. It's one of the faster ones on the market.
And you still had room to open up your hatch on your Tahoe?
No, so I couldn't do it before with either. So I can pull my hatch on the Tahoe partway out, but it won't open all the way because it's a fairly large door when it opens up.
That's usually where our dog rides back there. So I'm hoping that it's going to work. We have a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and it's, you know, it's on the lower end of the toy capacity, but it's 6,200 pounds. And so cargo and everything, we have to be pretty minimal, which is another reason I was asking about the generator, you know. But anyway, so I think, yeah, the electric jack, that's a ways down the road for us. We got to try it out first. You know?
Mine's a Grand Cherokee as well, 2014, but I've got the 5.7 liter V8, so I think I'm at 7,400, but everything else is breaking on it, so that's why I'm in the market for an F-150.
Yeah, ours is 2015. It's doing fine so far, and that's another reason the 20X was so appealing, because like a quality trailer that, you know, that I think we'll be able to tow, but we don't have a big percentage to spare. Yeah.
So try it out first, and you know, you'll know after your first couple of trips.
Yeah.
So I had a question about your lock. I know, Anna, you have the Proven Industries lock, which is what I'm going to get. I know that they have an upgrade for a stainless lock puck itself. Did either of you buy the stainless, or is there really a reason to them? If somebody's going to drill it, they're going to drill it, or what's your thoughts on that, or no thoughts? Or
I didn't, although I'll admit now, between me just putting it down on the ground, like the concrete in my driveway, it's starting to get scraped up. So I may need to repaint it, both the black frame as well as the red puck that I chose. But you're right, Keith, as I looked at it, I not only in storage, I use both the Proven Industries and also put a wheel chock that I've locked on the wheel. But the reality is, somebody knows how to pop one of these, they're going to pop it and they're going to take it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But this allows me to go back to the insurance company, show pictures. This is what I put on. I did my due diligence to lock it down, to guarantee that it wasn't, oh, you just left it there. Because these things are light enough that most SUVs, cars can pick up and take them. Right. So it's an easier idea, or an easier path to steal this versus my brother's fifth wheel. So I didn't want to take that chance.
I noticed the Airstream sells one, an Airstream supply, and it's $40.
I wouldn't trust it. I would not trust it.
I've videos, they can
there
those
is
off. They can knock those off. The cheaper ones, they can knock them off in seconds. I've seen videos of them just knocking those off with a hammer or a sledgehammer. So
there is a video, YouTube video out there of how to unlock the Proven. And it is, I mean, they have to have a lot of time to literally pick that lock. And, you know, a lot of, you know, they just probably look at it and say, I'm not going to, you know, work that hard, go to the next one. But I didn't upgrade to the stainless steel neither, just because it's, first of all, price. And then it's heavy. It's, you know, if this fails, then maybe I'll, you know, we'll upgrade to it. But I don't honestly think it's really that, you know, crucial. I think it's preference, really.
right. Okay. Thank you.
Is there more of a concern of the contents of the base camp, like people breaking in there? Do you guys ever worry about that, or is it?
I do all the time, because someone posted quite a while back. Oh, you know, it's I don't know if you guys saw that, because I commented, I'm like, don't put this on. It was on the 16. There is a way to break into it. Not through the door, but the window. But, oh gosh, we're recording this. I'm sorry. But no, always a concern, but luckily we've been, you know, okay. I mean, if you're at boondocking where, you know, you don't have anybody there, maybe it's not a concern. Neither will be when you have a lot of folks, you know, witness something like that. But yeah, just always something, you know, that we worry about.
Yeah, I guess I've never thought about that. If I go where I intend to go, I'm not worried about somebody stealing the base camp, but it could be somebody passing by that could get in and get expensive fishing gear or firearms or something like that I would not.
A laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I lived in my my current, you know, vintage Airstream, I mean, that's easy to get into. And so I never left a laptop or anything in there. I would put it in my truck and lock it in my truck, kind of, you know, under my back seat. Or you can buy, you know, and I think firearms, I think if you're going to take a firearm, you ought to have a gun, you know, some kind of one little safe, gun safe, pistol safes or something, and lock it. I just think all RVs are capable of being broken into fairly easy, I think. So
that's what we do. We remove everything, and we actually have a gun safe in the back of the truck, in the interior, but it's big enough for our valuables or, you know, whatever we bring, laptop when I work from camping. But we don't really, you know, we just leave whatever is really not, you know, important in there, like your normal stuff. But yeah, it's just, I think anyone can do it. And, you know, if they're enticed enough, I can't prevent it, but it is a worry.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered power, towing. Is anything else? Other questions in general that we wanted to go over?
At this exact moment, no. 5 minutes from now, probably.
Yeah, exactly. And I had my list of things. Oh, I'll ask one thing, which is kind of a picky thing, but I'm trying to buy all the things that were on the list for the adventure kit, because I know some I might want to choose for myself, which thing. you know, the hoses and I can't believe they don't even give you the sewer hose.
They used to.
They got the nice little tube to put it in, and then they don't give that to you. I mean, it's not very exciting stuff to buy, but like the hoses, wasn't there a post recently? I haven't been able to find it. I tried searching about somebody using one of those collapsible hoses because it's lighter weight. Have any of you, I mean, just use normal hoses for your water hose, your freshwater hose, and your
just a normal water hose with the blue filter. That's all we use for ours.
I've got the blue filter. For the water hose, I'm using 0G. So they're light, easy. I use them at the house as well. They're a little more expensive, but they're very compact and lightweight. There are other
a 0G hose.
Mm-hmm. And so I've seen debates of some folks coming back and saying, well, those grow mold faster. And then I actually watched Mark and Trish on KYD test that out. They took their 0G hose that they had been using for their camper full time for 3 years and literally cut it open, 0 mold inside, right? And you can watch another video and somebody says, oh, look at all this mold. The key is just keeping your stuff clean, drying it out, right? Because usually when I take my hoses, whether I'm using a regular water hose or the 0G for water, after I'm done a camping trip, I stretch it out and dry it out in the sun a little bit just to make sure that it's getting dry inside, and I hang it up so that all the water can drip out of it, just to minimize any potentials. Because there's been a time or two that I've been in a hurry. It's been raining. I've rolled everything up, put it back in the little storage next to the sewer container, put it in there, and it's wet inside, wet outside. Go back later on and do it. If it's concerned, change them every now and then.
This hose is from an RV, like city water, to the RV?
Yeah.
While you're at camp.
Yeah, you can use any garden hose. Some of the rubber hoses are harder to deal with, right? Because they get stiff, especially when it's cold. That's why I like the 0G. You can just fold it, move it. It's easy to pack away. But there are other brands just like it. For the hose I use for the Blackwater tank for fleshing, it's just a bright green, easy to see, cheap, flexible one that I got at someplace, right? It's one of those that as soon as water gets in it, it expands out and grows like a snake. And I just take that and I put it in a separate container. And then I bought 2 of the Chemco sewer hoses when I first got mine because it didn't come with the package. I've only ever used the 1 10-foot one. I've never had to, because the Basecamp's so easy to get right next to power, water, and everything else. I've never had to use anything much longer, but I've got an extra one just in case.
Is there a gray water hose too? A separate gray water hose?
So for the 20X, both the gray water and the black water come to a single outlet, and you connect the Slinky Stinky up to that and connect it to your sewer connection. And then what I always do is pull the pull the black first, let it go through. I connect up the black water flush, run water through. I'll close it, let water fill up inside the black tank, flush it again, let it fill up, flush it again, and just keep doing that. And then once that's done, I close the black and then I open up the gray, let it all come through. And then I'll take the hose that I've used for the black water flush and I'll just rinse inside of the sewer hose as well. Just before I even take it, I've disconnected it from the trailer, but it's still connected to the sewer connection. And then I just spray it down for some just regular water from the hose. The funny part is if you watch the water hose, if you're going to use your black water flush, most people connect both their city water and their black water flush to the same spigot, right? Which is not good because of all the bacteria and everything that can get there. So I actually use different adapters to make sure that I'm not putting the same one and to try and keep them separate and clean. But yeah, pretty much any hose that'll get you the water. And I said, if you've got a good water filter that you change on a regular basis, it makes sure that the water is clean as it gets into your trailer.
You use that elbow? Did you have to buy that clear elbow? That
I did.
Yes, that's necessary.
That's necessary.
That's necessary. Yes.
Yeah.
And what about the little racetrack thing? The support, the slinky support thing so it will go downhill.
Hardly ever. I don't even think I ever have used that. We don't connect to sewer. We keep ours in the tank just so we're not connected to anything we had to take off quickly. I've never used. It came with it, never used
so
it.
when you dump, you don't need that when you dump.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are some
You just need rubber
campgrounds.
gloves.
Yeah, there are some campgrounds that require the little support to make sure that it's there. But all the campgrounds I've been to so far, none of them have required it. I have the little support mechanism, but I literally, with wearing gloves, as Anna said, is I've cleaned and emptied the black, I'll take that hose and just lift it up and make sure everything is just flowing down in through there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. It's just good to know what's necessary and what's optional.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We bought the sewer hose, the red ones. Is it 20 feet? 10 feet will suffice, depending, because like what Wayne said, majority of the dump, you can pretty much pull right there and you don't need that much. We hardly ever use the second one. It's just there for backup. But
Okay.
yeah, dumping too is so easy. So easy.
Okay.
It's
You
one thing
said a
that people are scared
blue,
of.
you said a blue water filter. Is that just the Camco brand, or is there another brand that people really like? Or
Ours is just a Camco.
Yeah, I've just used the Camco.
Yeah.
Now,
thanks, Anna.
Oh, good. You got it. That was so cute.
I got them 4 months before I'm going to get my trailer, but I got my.
I think that's necessary, honestly. I every time I had looked in those openings, I could just see, because we have a lot of trees here, and boy, those bees and wasps, that's the first thing I can think of is like, oh my gosh, they're just going to go in there first thing. So
Yeah, I just got on and ordered right away.
Good. Oh,
Thanks, Anna.
oh.
These are pretty nifty. These little
Love them.
USB powered lights from Bare Bones.
I love Bare Bones.
You have to accumulate a few things before you get your trailer.
Exactly.
To get you
had
excited.
like half the room ready, because you got to be ready as soon as you get it.
It just makes you feel like it is going to be real if you acquire a few things. This is going to happen. Yeah. March. It was March 27th when I put down my deposit. We're picking it up on February 2nd.
Oh my gosh. That's right around the corner.
Well, the first date they told me was November 18th. And so, like, to be done at the factory. And then that got delayed a couple of times. But the most recent date they told me is December 7th. And I don't really know what the actual roll-off date was, but it didn't get to the dealership till January 4th, but bad weather, right? All across the country. I can hang on for that. But then January 4th and pick up February 2nd, that's kind of
that's a long time.
But it's cold weather.
Yeah.
It'll be just in time for some good spring camping. And
so I heard right now they're currently having another shortage, refrigerator and cushions. So
our trailer had both of those when I saw it.
Oh, good. Good.
Mine might not.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope something changes.
Yeah, by then, hopefully.
Yeah.
So to go back to power a little bit, Wayne, are you considering going to lithium, or because you have your generator, you feel like it's not really necessary at this point? Or
I will go to lithium. I got to convince my wife. So she's okay with the fact of me taking and lugging the generator and putting it in the car, taking it back out and doing the other pieces. And it works fine, right? Because I actually use it as a backup for the house. We had an ice storm here recently that, I'll take and put the refrigerator, freezer, those types of things on there. As I'm working on a transfer switch for the house to make it easier to do all those things. But I do want to be able to do more boondocking, and because as I'm looking at the campgrounds, it's getting harder and harder to find a spot. I've debated building a campground, but I just don't want to go through the hassle of having to manage it, right? Because it's great once you do it and you look at the potential money you're going to get, but then you got to deal with the really nice people that come in and the really ugly people that come in, right? So I'll probably go with 3 or 4 lithium 100 amps. I'll upgrade the solar. I think what I'm looking at doing for getting the additional solar panels on the roof is there's another YouTube channel, RV with Tito. And he just recently did this where he took channels, this aluminum channel, and he used, I think he called it VHB tape, very high bond. And he literally just used the bond on top of a structure like we would have for the aluminum roof. And then put it on there, and you look at the weight ratings and the power for the tape and the other things, and you use lock nuts down into this channel that you put it in. It looks like that'll be easier than me trying to drill holes into the top of the base camp versus trying to do flexible, because I'm concerned about the long term with the flexible. So I plan on upgrading the panels and doing this because I'd like to do it a lot more. I'm not quite in retirement yet, and I got to wait and see what the stock market does for the next couple of years, just if I can retire earlier, if I got to keep working it much longer. Yeah, I like to tinker, as you can see, because I've changed out the jack stand. I've changed out some other stuff. I've installed the TPMS and done other work. So I'm probably going to do all the work myself just by the research, because it's just a fun hobby to do for me.
Do you have is there somebody who's kind of showing the best panels? Are you still thinking ZAMP, or are there other panels that you're looking at, or is that kind of down the road?
So I've looked at ZAMP. Renogy is one of those that I like a lot. I'm also in a bunch of Facebook groups with kind of do-it-yourself DIY solar. There's two different ones in there, and these folks are building their own batteries, building their own lithium batteries, buying the cells and putting them together and doing all the work. So that's farther than I want to go. But the reality is, you'll see in there, and if you look at Will Prowse, that one that I showed a little bit earlier, he occasionally tests different panels from different manufacturers, and there's not a whole lot of difference between the different panels, right? And there's monocrystalline versus not, and some of the different pieces and how the panels are made. But at the end of the day, if I can buy a 400 watt panel that maybe only gets me 80% capacity at $100 versus a 90 watt panel at $200 that I'm only going to get 80 watts out of, well, it just economically makes more sense to buy something, because it might not be as efficient, but it's going to give me more power coming in from the sun than if I bought the more expensive others. Then there's the support side, right? How much do you want to sit in and go from there? So I like the ZAMP. I like their little portable units, but I think it's like $1,000 for one of their portable units now that are flexible with the control and the other pieces. And you can go to Renogy, or you can go to some of the other vendors and buy them much cheaper.
Hey, I'm gonna jump in and say happy Sunday. See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks
Sean.
everybody for dialing in.
Thanks for getting this together, bud.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
This was really fun.
Thank you.
Really helpful
Absolutely.
too. Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I found it very helpful. Thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
I don't know, with a lot, when we were going to add a third battery for ours just recently, and we were so gung-ho in a 2000 watt inverter, but after everything that needs to be added, they needed another controller, they had to rewire something else. It was so much money. It was so crazy, because we're not techies, we just know how to work certain things. And so we ended up doing the portable solar generators, power stations, and we're going to test that out and see how that works, because you can still tote that around inside the base camp and power pretty much everything that 110 will. So I'm excited to see what Wayne does. That's going to be so awesome.
But I'm also relieved to know that it's been working well for him with just the AGMs, because that's what we're starting with. And my husband's like, well, just wait and find out how much use, because we're tent campers. We're used to not consuming much, and we boondocked in a tent, and so, and I appreciate his approach too. Well, let's see. And so that's why we got the shunt, so we can monitor the battery power. So it's nice to know that, we might not be able to stay out there, obviously, weeks at a time, but with our solar, maybe we'll get a solid week out there or more. I don't know.
I'm sure you will. Absolutely. When we had the 16 with AGMs, we had no issues. And we'd go like a week and a half. It's just depending, you know, if there's sun. Now, when you get cloudy weather, then that's.
Yeah. We're in California.
Oh, you guys always have sun.
We got
except for this previous rain you guys had. You were sharing with us.
We had lots and lots of rain, which was great, but they haven't had any for about a month now. So we're ready for some more, but
take some of ours. We've been raining since, gosh, fall, beginning of fall. We have 1 week right now of no rain. We've had mudslides like up north. All these homes that have been there for 30, 40 years, they're falling. Yes, we've got so much, it's crazy, but we were supposed to have sun here for a week and all we have is fog every day till Friday.
Anna, my sister lives in South Hill, Puyallup.
Oh, yeah. I was just down the hill from her. Yes, that's right. You said that. Yes,
I did. I think on your Instagram, I mentioned that to you. Yeah, and my nephew lives down by the fairgrounds area. But,
he's my neighbor.
Yeah,
I'm just down the fairgrounds too.
Anyway, and she's been sending me lots of snow pictures and snow-covered yards.
Yeah, we didn't know what to do. We don't get snow much in Washington, probably like South Carolina. And where are you from, Keith? I forgot.
Oh, I'm in Arizona.
Oh, Arizona. Yes. That's right. Yeah. So we don't know what to do with it. We had, I think we had a foot here in South Hill, and then anywhere else, they had like 40 inches
is a lot for South
40
Hill.
inches. We in 48 hours, 40 inches. And they're just like,
well, driving. My sister lives at the bottom of the hill and she's
we don't know how to drive in snow.
Yeah.
My husband does. He's when he had he gained his mobility, but he lost his left arm. But he he's a pro. He drives, he backs up everything. But he's out there. He was supposed to be shoveling, like to do something in the driveway, and he's out there with that truck going. And where did you go? I was just trying to test them.
Test it in the snow.
Yeah.
Aren't you amazed at all these pictures of people doing all the winter camping?
Yeah.
I mean, up at Mount Hood and stuff on our channel, it's like, wow.
I know. I'm so jealous.
Wow.
We do winter camping. Well, we have not done snow yet because we like our tanks full constantly. And we've dry camp, but we still have our tank full.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Well, it's really lovely to see you all in person, and thank you always for your helpful comments, Wayne and Anna, on the Facebook page. It's been a great learning experience for me because we're first-time RV owners, and it's kind of overwhelming. There's a lot more involved with it, but hopefully it's going to be second nature in short order.
You're going to be a pro after 1 or 2 trips. You'll know, you're like, I get it all. I think it's all, for all of us, it's just, the hands-on and just stay. There's no, manual for it. It's just how you just do it.
Yeah. Well,
buddy, you get used to it. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up. You're going to break a hose or something else.
Something's
going to fall off. Forget a jack.
Yeah.
Something will fall off on the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave your fan, your window, like it's a window or something on. Yeah.
I mean, like one day I was helping, my daughter was helping me park in the driveway, and some of the pictures you saw my driveway, but my driveway goes downhill. And I was getting ready to unhook, and my daughter looked at me and said, "Daddy, are you not going to put chocks on the tires?" Yeah, I probably should do that.
Yes.
Right? Mind the dip, something's always going to break.
There's no, I don't think, as often too, because we camp, like once or twice a month, just everywhere here. It's muscle memory, but it's not. Something happens every time that you miss something, even if you have a checklist. I mean, it's always some kind of drama.
Yeah. But it's worth it, right?
It
It's
is.
worth
It is.
Yeah.
It
is.
It's a learning curve. Even my wife, who's never worked with backing up, but she's come such a huge way. But it took a while for me to help her to understand backing up the base camp. I don't need you looking at my truck wheels. I don't need you looking at the base camp wheels other to make sure I'm not hitting anything. Which direction is the entire body going, right? I'll worry about the wheels. Well, I thought you wanted me to watch the wheels. No, but she's gotten so good at it coming in. All right, a little bit, turn a little more passenger, go a little more driver, right? And then I'm adjusting and trying to figure it out. And there have been times getting into my driveway, I've done it the first time, it's been perfect. Other times it's taken me 8 tries.
It's always different. Yeah.
You'll come back in and that's not working. I just pull forward and I go again, and I pull forward and I go again. Okay.
I have to tell you guys, backing up the Basecamp 20 is so much easier than the 16.
Really?
Lower is harder.
Yes, I think the longer, yeah, it's has something to do with the length. The 16 wants to do this constantly.
Mhm.
And the 20, for some reason, it's just so much easier, and it goes straight.
And you can do that with the weight distributing hitch on it, the equalizer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That you can back up with it still on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, the one thing I'll tell you about the weight distribution hits and like the equalizer, we've debated naming our base camp Squeaky, because that weight distribution hit squeaks so loud at times.
Someone had warned me about that. I actually have an acquaintance in town with a Basecamp 16, and they said, oh yeah, the neighbors all come out of their house when we go down the street. What's that noise? So I was not completely surprised when the hospitality lady at Airstream, she said, okay, and you're getting the equalizer. She said, now would you like she had a name for them, but like the squeaky brackets, or would you like the silicone brackets or something? Anyway, they have a name, and I knew exactly what she was talking about, even though I'd never seen an equalizer in my life. Would you like the bracket jackets?
Yes.
And I said, bracket jackets? I said, is this because of noise? And yeah, and so $23 more to get bracket jackets. But I said, oh yeah, whatever will help. But
it does help. It does not 100% get rid of it, but it is a big help on that as you go around the corner.
Yeah, that's what we like, to be center of attention. Yeah.
I'm coming. I'm here.
We're going camping. Sorry, you're not.
Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Awesome. Well, any other questions? Are we good for the day?
You guys,
thanks for joining.
Yeah,
Thanks.
this was awesome.
Thanks for having this. This is great.
Thanks so very much. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining. And
Okay.
hey, I might not know all the answers, but I'll fake it till I make it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Thanks,
You
y'all too.
Take care, you guys.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.